Friend, I have received so many cards and letters from you students saying, Jack, how can you keep your enthusiasm up? What has gone on in your life to make you feel so strongly about your profession of nutrition and physical culture work? Well, you know, students, this wonderful profession is closer to my heart than you realize. I want to tell you a little story. I mean, I've mentioned my father probably once or twice before, but for some of you new viewers, I'd like to tell you about this wonderful dad that I had. My father was one of the greatest men that anyone had ever met, one of the greatest husbands. Of all the time my mother and father were married, I never heard them once have a crossword between them, and a tremendous provider, one of the finest, most unselfish men. Any people ever talked about John Lane, you know, they always said, what a fine man. My dad used to pride himself in setting a fine table. I guess it was the fact that he was poor for so many years of his life, you know, when he was a boy, and they didn't have much food. So all the money that he made went to buy food for us, and you could come into our house anytime you wanted, and we could feed 15 people just like that. So naturally, my dad did all the buying. He'd come home from work at night, and he'd buy all his groceries, and he'd sit down to this gargantuan meal, and he'd overeat. And after dinner, his favorite hobby would be turning on the radio and listening to his favorite radio program. It was Amos and Andy then. He'd listen to that for a while, and then after the program, he'd fall asleep, and he'd stay there till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd get up and go to bed. Well, this went on for quite a few years, and I could see my dad failing. He was losing his zest for living, his energy and vitality, and he was getting all these extra pounds, and he couldn't move around like he used to. His teeth and eyes were going bad on him, and I could just see him slipping. So I went to my dad, and I says, Dad, I said, why don't we start doing something? Set you up a good program of exercise. You know, I had a little gym in the backyard, and I wanted him to do some exercise with me and get on a good program of nutrition. You know, my mother, she had a breakdown, and she went along with us, and she's at 77 now, one of the greatest people you've ever seen. Well, my dad, you know, he said, well, that exercise for you young kids, and he wouldn't go along one bit. Well, anywho, remember one day, he was still a young man, just in the prime of his life. He had everything ahead of me. He says, kid, he says, you know, I'm not feeling too well. I wish you'd take me over to the hospital. We took him over to the hospital for a checkup. And 3 days later, my dad was dead of what? A cirrhosis liver and a diseased heart. Two things that definitely could have been prevented. My dad actually committed suicide. He took his own life by disregarding nature's laws. Well, the thing that I'm trying to put over students is this. I feel, as I look back over the years, that I let my dad down some way. I don't know how, but I didn't insist enough that he go along with this program of exercise and nutrition. I failed somewhere. And that's how I feel about you. When you students sit there and you don't do the exercise, you don't go along with these little diet ideas, or maybe you work out for a while, then you skip for 2 or 3 weeks. Well, students, you're my obligation. I feel as though I've let you down. I try to make it pleasant for you, and I want you to go along because I know what this can do for you. It's a matter of life and death. A lot of you say, you know, all that stuff. But believe me, students, we know that people are dying early in life and why they're not enjoying life. They're eating too much of the wrong foods, they're not getting enough exercise, so I'm trying to get you to eat the right foods and get a little more systematic exercise. So please, I don't want to fail. I want to do my job as best I possibly can, but I have to have you. If you don't participate, then I've let you down, and I don't want to be a failure. You help me to succeed. Will you do that by going along with my ideas as much as you can? Thanks for listening to me. Now let's get back to our gymnastics. Come on.